and his daughter went on what was supposed to be a breathtaking hot air balloon ride. But they never came back. For 6 long years, there wasn't a single trace. It was as if they had simply disappeared into the sky, the balloon vanishing without a sound. But then, a hiker stumbled upon something buried deep in the woods, and everything changed. It was early morning in Eldenra, a quiet town tucked deep in the misty Pacific Northwest. Fog clung to the hills as the sun began to rise behind the towering ridgeline of Elden Ridge National Preserve, a wild, remote stretch of forest known for its rugged terrain and long-forgotten stories. Lena Rowe had barely opened her eyes when her phone rang. The clock read 6:17 a.m. Outside, the fog made the world look pale and distant. When she saw the name on her phone, Detective Roy Beckett, her heart nearly stopped. 6 years had passed since she lost her 11-year-old daughter, Mira, and her husband, Daniel. Most people had written it off as a tragic accident, but for Lena, the silence had always felt heavier than that. "Hello?" she answered, her voice still rough with sleep, but her focus sharpening fast. "I'm sorry to call so early," Detective Beckett said, his tone serious, "but we have an update on your case." Lena sat up instantly, clutching the phone. "What kind of update?" she asked. "A hiker found something deep in the woods yesterday," he said. "We believe it's the balloon your husband and daughter were in." The world seemed to tilt. After 6 years with no leads, no answers, not even a hint. This. "Where?" she whispered. "Elden Ridge Preserve," he said. "It's very remote. We'll give you the coordinates. Can you come today?" "Yes," Lena said without hesitation. "I'm on my way." Just as she ended the call and began writing down the location, her phone rang again. It was Grant Miles, Daniel's best friend since childhood and his business partner at Skyreach Balloons. After Daniel's disappearance, Grant had become one of Lena's few steady supports. "Lena," Grant said, "I just got off the phone with Roy. I'm heading there now." "I'm getting ready too. Let me drive. It's early, roads are slick, and the fog's heavy. We're going to the same place anyway." She agreed. It wasn't unusual. Grant had often stepped in over the years, quietly helping however he could. She quickly dressed in jeans, a warm sweater, and hiking boots. By the time she gulped down a quick coffee, Grant's silver SUV was in the driveway. The 20-minute drive felt longer. The air inside the car was thick with tension. Grant, usually chatty, was silent, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "What do you think they found?" Lena finally asked. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but whatever it is, we'll face it together." At the edge of the preserve, Detective Beckett met them at a ranger station. From there, they hiked, through tangled brush, over fallen logs, and across rugged ground, following no clear path. "How much farther?" Lena asked after nearly 40 minutes. "Not much," the detective replied. "It's far from any trail. That's probably why no one found it sooner." Then they saw it. The area had been cordoned off with yellow tape. In the center of the clearing was a wide excavation pit, at least 15 feet across. Inside it lay the unmistakable remains of a balloon, faded, torn fabric, its colors dulled by dirt and time. The basket was overturned, and nearby, several old metal canisters were partially buried in the soil. Investigators moved carefully around the site, photographing, measuring, and collecting samples. Lena stood frozen, taking it all in. Detective Beckett guided her toward a man near the edge of the dig site. He was tall, lean, dressed in hiking gear, and beside him sat a German shepherd, alert and calm. "This is Caleb Marsh," the detective said. "He and his dog discovered the site." Caleb gave a respectful nod. "I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am." Lena's voice barely rose above a whisper. "How did you find it?" Caleb gestured toward the dog. "This is Ranger. He's a retired K9. I adopted him a while ago. Yesterday, while hiking off trail, he started barking and digging at this exact spot. He's trained to detect human scent, so I contacted authorities right away. Detective Beckett added, "When we began digging, we found the balloon beneath a tarp. The topsoil had regrown, bushes, small trees, but all younger than the surrounding forest. Everything was placed deliberately, like someone was trying to keep it hidden." Lena stepped closer to the pit, her eyes locked on the wreckage. After all this time, why was it buried? And more importantly, who buried it? "That's it," Lena whispered. "I recognized the pattern. Daniel and I designed it together. Those yellow and orange streaks with the black swirl. That's our balloon." She turned to the detective, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and dread. Did you find any remains?" Detective Beckett shook his head gently. "We've searched the entire site. No human remains were found. What Ranger reacted to was the lingering presence of propane trapped in the tanks that were buried with the balloon." Lena crossed her arms tightly, the information sinking in. "So, it wasn't just a weather accident," she said slowly. "Someone actually buried it?" "We can't confirm that entirely yet," the detective replied with caution. "There were reports of unusual weather patterns that day, conditions that could have caused a crash, but the way this was hidden, it suggests deliberate concealment. Someone didn't want this to be found." A spark of hope ignited in Lena's chest. Then maybe Daniel and Mira, maybe they made it out. Maybe they're still out there. Detective Beckett's face remained unreadable. "We're considering every possibility, Mrs. Rowe." Lena wiped at her face, trying to hold back her emotions. The balloon that had taken her family from her was finally in front of her, silent, damaged, buried deep in the woods. Around her, the forensic team worked in quiet focus, measuring, recording, collecting. Grant, who had barely spoken since their arrival, walked over to the excavation. His face was pale as he took out his phone and began taking photos. Not of the whole site, Lena noticed, but of one specific detail, a metal plate with a serial number attached to the basket. "What are you doing?" she asked softly. "Inventory," Grant replied without looking up. "These balloons are worth a lot. I need to document everything." Lena nodded vaguely. That made sense. Grant had always been the more practical of the two partners, managing operations while Daniel had been the face of the business. Still, there was something almost too composed about him. He stayed on his phone for a while, typing, sending pictures. Lena tried to brush off her unease. He'd been there for her since the beginning, helpful, supportive, reliable. He had a business to keep running, after all. One of the forensic techs called them over to examine the basket. "There are faint traces of blood here," the technician explained, pointing to the interior. "And see these tears in the fabric, along with these marks? This damage doesn't fully line up with what we'd expect from a crash. It suggests there may have been a struggle inside the basket." Lena's breath caught. A struggle? Her mind reeled. Had something gone wrong mid-flight? Had Daniel tried to protect Mira? Or was it something darker? "We'll analyze everything carefully," Beckett assured her. "You don't need to stay. We'll keep you updated with anything we learn." He turned to Grant. "Mr. Miles, we'll likely need to meet with your staff at Skyreach soon, once we know more." "Absolutely," Grant said quickly. "Just let me know when." Lena gave the site one last look, the twisted fabric, the crushed basket, the buried memories, and then turned away. Still no answers, just more questions. With Beckett's permission, she and Grant began the hike back. Caleb and his dog had already left, their part in the discovery done. The fog was thinning now, and cool morning air followed them as they made their way to the SUV. "I'll drive you home," Grant offered as they reached the vehicle. The ride back to Eldenra was quiet. Halfway through, Grant reached over and gave Lena's hand a gentle squeeze. "Try not to worry too much," he said. "The team's good. They'll figure out what happened, and we'll know soon." Lena gave a slight nod, unable to speak. Her thoughts were still deep in the forest, trapped with that balloon. When they pulled into her driveway, Grant shut off the engine and turned to her. "Would you mind if I came in for a bit? I need to file a few insurance forms and could use your table. I'll even make breakfast while I'm at it." It didn't seem odd. Grant had been in the house more times than she could count, both before and after Daniel and Mira disappeared. He and Daniel had cooked here together often, laughing and sharing stories. "Of course," she said. "You know where everything is." "I'll take care of it," Grant replied, heading straight into the kitchen. "Breakfast will be ready before you know it." "You don't have to," she started. "I don't mind," he interrupted warmly. "I've made breakfast in this kitchen dozens of times. You go take a moment. I've got it." Lena nodded and went upstairs. In the bathroom, she leaned on the sink, her reflection blurry through tears that had waited far too long to fall. Now, finally alone, she let go, her shoulders shaking, the grief quietly pouring out. Her sobs eventually softened, replaced by a quiet stillness as the weight of the morning's discovery settled deeper into her chest. After several minutes, Lena splashed cold water on her face, trying to collect herself. She picked up her phone and sent a message to the one person she trusted to make sense of chaos, her best friend, Nona. "They found Daniel and Mira's balloon," she typed, "buried in the woods. Police say it was deliberately hidden." The reply came within seconds. "Oh my God, are you okay? What else did they find?" Lena typed quickly, recounting everything she could remember from the morning. Nona, an engineer by profession, had always provided a grounded analytical view to balance Lena's emotions. A few moments later, another message flashed across her screen. "From what you're describing, it sounds like someone tampered with the balloon, probably the burner valve. If the dog could still detect gas after all this time, the leak might have been slow but deliberate." Lena stared at the text. "So this wasn't an accident?" "No," Nona wrote. "If someone tampered with the burner valve, the plan might have been for the balloon to crash and go up in flames, making it look like a tragedy no one could trace." "Who could have done something like that?" Lena asked. "The person responsible for pre-flight checks would be the most likely," Nona replied. "That's standard protocol. Balloons are always inspected before takeoff." Lena sat with that thought for a moment, realizing how little she knew about the technical side of her husband's work. Daniel had always drawn a line between home and business. She had visited the company a few times, but he kept the inner workings to himself, wanting home to remain peaceful, free from work stress. "Thank you," she wrote back. "You're one of the strongest women I know," Nona replied. "Take this one step at a time. I'm always here if you need anything." The message grounded her. She exhaled slowly, then headed for the shower, changed into clean clothes, and made her way back downstairs. The living room and kitchen were quiet. On the dining table sat a modest breakfast: toast, scrambled eggs, sliced fruit, and a pot of fresh coffee. Grant's laptop was open next to the plate. Through the window, she could see him on the back porch, pacing and talking intensely on the phone. Lena sat down and began to eat, grateful for something warm in her stomach. As she sipped her coffee, a soft series of notification sounds chimed from the laptop beside her. At first, she ignored them until the screen lit up again and again. Snippets of chat messages appeared in the corner. "What a pretty lady. You're lucky, man. She's perfect." Lena froze slightly, unsure of what she was seeing. Her first thought was that Grant must have posted an old photo of himself and his wife, Melissa. Maybe these were just comments from friends. But then she frowned. Why would Grant be sharing personal images on this day of all days? Still, she reminded herself, it wasn't her place to ask. His private life was his own. The back door creaked open, and Grant stepped inside, sliding his phone into his pocket. "There you are," he said warmly. "All refreshed?" "Thanks for making breakfast," Lena replied, gesturing toward the meal. "My pleasure," he said. He walked over, closed his laptop in one swift motion, and began packing up his things. That was the main office. I'll have to head over to deal with the insurance claims. You should take it easy today. It's been a heavy morning. Lena set her coffee cup down. Actually, I'd like to come with you. Grant looked up. To the office? I haven't been there in a while. Not since last year, I think, she said. After everything this morning, I feel like I should reconnect with that part of Daniel's life. For a split second, a flicker of something passed across Grant's face. Surprise, maybe concern. But it vanished quickly. That's not really necessary, he said, with a casual shrug. There's not much happening at HQ these days. You'd be bored. I'd like to go, Lena said, more firmly this time. Daniel always brought me at least once a year. It made me feel connected to what he loved. Grant paused, then gave a slow nod. If you're sure, I'll take you, but I'll need to leave for the insurance meeting afterward. Of course, Lena said, finishing the last of her coffee. While she rinsed her plate and set it in the sink, Grant packed up his things. Within minutes, they were in the car and pulling away from the house. As they drove toward the industrial district where Skyreach Balloons was headquartered, Lena glanced at Grant, noting the way his fingers tapped nervously on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched tighter than usual. For the first time, a quiet thought stirred in her mind, something she had never allowed herself to ask before. Was there more to Daniel's oldest friend than she knew? The company building came into view, sleek and low, with wide windows looking out onto a small private launch field. The parking lot was mostly empty, only a few cars scattered across it. They pulled in, and the next chapter of the mystery was about to unfold. Grant introduced Lena to a young woman with short auburn hair and sharp, observant eyes. Mia, this is Lena Rowe, Daniel's wife, he said. She'd like a quick tour of the facility. Can you show her around while I take care of something urgent? Of course, Mr. Miles, Mia replied with a courteous smile. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Rowe. Grant disappeared down a hallway toward his office, leaving Lena in Mia's capable hands. The young assistant guided her through the building with ease, pointing out each department as they went. This is our customer service area, Mia said, gesturing to a room where staff were answering phones and typing rapidly at their desks. And through here is the design studio where we create all of our balloon artwork. As they walked, Lena found herself pausing beside the framed photographs that lined the halls, images of Daniel grinning next to smiling clients, standing proudly in front of vibrant balloons. Each picture felt like a quiet echo from the past. Everyone here remembers your husband and daughter, Mia said softly, noticing Lena's gaze. Their disappearance, it impacted all of us. They found the balloon this morning, Lena said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. It was buried. The police don't think it was an accident. For a second, Mia's expression shifted. Her polished demeanor flickered, revealing something like unease. I hadn't heard, she said, her voice faltering. That's awful! They continued the tour, but Lena noticed Mia's tone had changed. Her responses grew shorter, her explanations less detailed. When they reached the maintenance hangar, a vast space lined with balloon equipment, Mia's words felt rushed. This is where all repairs and safety checks happen, she said vaguely, waving a hand at the area. Each balloon gets inspected before and after every flight. Lena looked around, her mind racing. Do you think anyone here might have had something against Daniel? Is it possible someone tampered with the equipment? Mia was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was uncertain. Everyone adored Daniel, especially little Mira. I can't imagine anyone doing something so awful. She hesitated. Why do you ask? I'm just thinking out loud, Lena said gently. There were some details this morning. It raised questions. She was about to ask more when Mia suddenly cut in. Let me take you to our client lounge, she offered quickly. You'll be more comfortable there, I'd actually prefer to see Daniel's office, Lena said. Mia stiffened. For just a moment, there was a flash of something, panic maybe, in her eyes. I'm sorry, she said carefully. That room's been locked since the day he went missing. Only Mr. Miles has the key, and he stepped out. Before Lena could reply, Mia's phone buzzed. She checked the screen and her face tightened. I'm really sorry, Mrs. Rowe. I need to take care of something urgently. Would you mind waiting in the lounge? There's a TV and some magazines. I'll come back as soon as I can. Without waiting for a response, she turned and headed down the corridor, phone pressed to her ear. Lena followed her to the lounge but stopped just outside when she caught snippets of Mia's conversation. Police tomorrow, safety paperwork, client coming. Alone in the room, Lena sat down but couldn't relax. Had the police already planned their company visit? Was Skyreach preparing for it behind closed doors? Or were there clients coming who weren't supposed to know anything was wrong? She reached for her phone to call Detective Beckett for an update, but paused. He was likely still at the excavation site, and she knew he'd contact her once he had more to share. After nearly 20 minutes alone, with no sign of Mia returning, Lena quietly left the lounge. She remembered the creative department was nearby, Daniel's favorite part of the company. He used to light up showing her the studio where designers created the vibrant balloon patterns that made their business so beloved. Walking through the hallways, she passed the maintenance bay again, and a room filled with coiled ropes, fuel tanks, and folded canvas. But just as she approached the row of private offices, something caught her eye. Grant's office door was slightly open. Curious, Lena peered through the narrow glass panel. Inside wasn't Grant, but Mia, moving quickly, gathering papers and folders, stuffing them into a bag. Lena tapped lightly on the door as she pushed it open. Mia? The assistant jumped, clutching a stack of documents against her chest, eyes wide with alarm. Mrs. Rowe, I was just about to come find you, she said, her voice too high, too quick. What are you doing in here? Lena asked, stepping further inside. Mr. Miles called, Mia answered. He forgot an important file, asked me to scan and send it over. Just some insurance paperwork. But as Mia shifted the folders in her arms, Lena noticed something odd, something that didn't quite match that explanation. As Mia shifted the folders in her arms, Lena's eyes caught a glimpse of something unexpected. A worn, handwritten logbook marked fuel reports. On the floor beside Mia was a cardboard box labeled archive, but someone had scribbled discard across it in black marker. Sitting right on top of that box was a folder with a bold title, Maintenance Log, April 2017, the exact month Daniel and Mira had disappeared. Why do you still have these? Lena asked, her voice tightening. I remember the police asked for all maintenance records when they first investigated. Mia's face went pale. These are just copies, she stammered. The originals were handed over. I was just scanning a few extras for internal use. She wouldn't meet Lena's eyes. I really need to get this done, Mrs. Rowe, Mia added quickly, stepping around her and hurrying off down the hall, still clutching the documents like something precious. Lena watched her go, a cold ripple of unease settling in. Something wasn't right at Skyreach Balloons. Still shaken, she resumed her walk through the building, making her way toward the design department, Daniel's favorite space, where artists had once transformed his ideas into the vivid colors that floated across the sky. As she passed a hallway filled with photographs of balloons gliding over scenic landscapes, she caught voices around the corner. 2 male employees were speaking in hushed tones. They moved the client to today, one of them whispered. He's arriving in under an hour. That fast? The other replied, sounding anxious. Client's not happy about the rush, but Grant says we don't have a choice. The police come tomorrow. He wants everything handled by this afternoon. So focus on the client and clear those boxes. The men fell silent the moment they turned the corner and saw Lena, They nodded politely as they passed, but their tense expressions spoke volumes. Something was being hidden, and they knew it. Just then, Lena's phone rang. It was Detective Beckett. She stepped away into a quiet nook near a water fountain and answered. "Mrs. Rowe," the detective said, his voice grave, "we've uncovered more evidence at the site. There are signs of restraints being used, physical marks inside the basket, and what appears to be a weapon." Lena's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means this was not a tragic accident," Beckett said. "We also found signs of tampering with both the burner valve and the deflation port. It was deliberately sabotaged." Lena felt the world tilt. "There's more," the detective continued. "Deeper in the soil beneath the wreckage, we uncovered bone fragments. We believe they're human." She leaned against the wall for support. "Do you think someone killed them?" "We can't say for certain yet," he replied, "but based on what we've found, we suspect someone within the company was involved. We're arranging interviews with the full staff tomorrow morning." A pause. "Where are you now, Mrs. Rowe?" "I'm at Skyreach headquarters," she said. "I came here with Grant, but he stepped out. His assistant gave me a tour." "Grant Miles is currently our primary person of interest," Beckett said, his voice dropping low, "along with anyone who worked maintenance the day of that flight." "Grant?" Lena said, almost to herself. "He was Daniel's best friend." "I need you to leave immediately," the detective said firmly. "Don't wait. Don't meet with him again. Officers are already en route to check the premises. Do you understand?" "Yes," Lena whispered. Fear was rising fast now. She ended the call and turned toward the front exit. Her mind was racing. Grant, the man who had practically been family, was now under suspicion, and suddenly, the signs she'd brushed off that morning came flooding back. His lack of emotion, the closed laptop, the secretive phone calls, the way Mia had panicked. It all began to line up in ways she couldn't ignore. As she approached the lobby, something through the window caught her eye. Grant was outside. He stood beside a company utility cart, speaking with 3 men. 2 of them were dressed in black suits and sunglasses. The third, clearly a Skyreach employee, was the same man Lena had overheard in the hallway earlier. Grant handed the suited men an envelope. One of them opened it and briefly checked the contents, thick with what looked like cash, before all 3 got into a trailing jeep and drove off. Lena instinctively ducked back from the window, pressing herself flat against the wall. Her heart was pounding. That wasn't just unusual, it was wrong. No company transaction, especially not one involving product or finance, should be handled like that. For the first time in her life, Lena was hiding from Grant, and she had no idea what he might do next. She waited until he re-entered the building, his face strained, his movements tight with stress. He headed straight toward his office. Once he was out of sight, Lena turned away and made a decision. Lena's eyes flicked back toward the box truck. It had rolled to a stop at a loading dock behind the building, where a small crew was gathering. Several employees were transferring boxes that looked exactly like the one she'd seen earlier in Grant's office, the one marked discard. And just like that, it hit her. They weren't just clearing space, they were getting rid of evidence before the police arrived, before it could be tied to Daniel, Mira, or whatever had really happened that day. She knew what she should do: call the detective, wait for the authorities. But something deeper held her in place, a gnawing voice in her gut. What if Mira was still alive? What if the truth was in that truck and this was her only chance? Her pulse racing, she watched as the truck's rear door slammed shut and the driver climbed into the cab. The dark SUV she'd seen earlier was already gone. She made a split-second decision. Without hesitation, she darted across the parking lot, glancing through windshields, trying doors. One unlocked, a dusty old pickup. She yanked it open, climbed inside, and flung the glove box open. There they were, the keys. Her hands trembling, she started the engine and pulled onto the street, following the box truck at a distance. At the next light, she kept just far enough back to avoid suspicion, but close enough not to lose it. "I'm sorry, detective," she whispered to herself, eyes locked on the truck. "But I have to know." The vehicle led her 20 minutes out of town, eventually turning onto a gravel path swallowed by thick forest. The road twisted for half a mile before opening onto what looked like an abandoned farm, a worn-out house, a decaying barn, and scattered outbuildings, all long forgotten by time. The truck rolled around to the back of the barn, out of view from the road. Parked beside it was the same trail jeep she'd seen earlier. Lena pulled onto an overgrown side road, cut the engine, and ducked low in her seat. Logic screamed at her to turn around, to call for backup, but something deeper overruled it. A quiet, fierce instinct, something only a mother would understand. She stepped out of the truck and moved into the tree line, her breath shallow, her body tense. About 50 yards from the barn, she crouched behind a dense cluster of bushes and pulled out her phone. Text to Detective Beckett. Followed a truck from Skyreach to a remote farm. Boxes being loaded. Suspicious activity. Sending GPS now. The reply came almost immediately. Leave now. This is extremely dangerous. Police are on their way. She was about to type a response when something at the barn drew her eyes. Movement. First, the drivers. Then, two of the suited men she'd seen earlier stepped out. But they weren't alone. Between them, they were half dragging, half supporting a young woman. Blindfolded, her hands bound in front of her. Lena's breath hitched in her throat. Even after all this time, even through the distance, the dirt, the silence, she knew. It was Mira. Her daughter was alive. She slapped a trembling hand over her mouth, trying not to make a sound. Tears burned her eyes as she watched them shove Mira into the back of the truck. New message to Beckett. She's here. It's Mira. Alive. They're moving her. At least 4 men. Please hurry. Below the message, she attached a second location ping. She wanted to run forward, to scream, to tear the doors open and get her daughter back. But one person against all of them would end in disaster. She had to wait, pray that help would come in time. More boxes were loaded into the truck, and then tires on gravel. A familiar silver SUV came speeding up the road. Grant's. He slammed on the brakes and jumped out, fury all over his face. "Lena!" he shouted into the open air. "I know you're here! Come out! Now!" The men at the truck looked startled by the outburst. "What is this?" one of the suited men snapped. "Why are you here? Who are you yelling for?" "A woman named Lena," Grant replied sharply. "She was at HQ earlier. Now she's vanished. We checked the lot footage. She took one of the trucks. GPS cut out right up this road." He pointed toward the path Lena had taken. "She's here. She's watching. Find her." The men exchanged glances. One of them scoffed. "We don't have time for this," he said coldly. "Our arrangement was for the girl. Your problems are not our concern." Grant ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Fine. Take her. Johnson Riley, you drive the jeep and truck. The rest of you, search the woods." She couldn't have gone far. Lena froze, pressing herself lower into the earth as the box truck's engine roared to life and began to pull away, with Mira still inside. Lena could only watch in helpless silence as the box truck, with her daughter inside, pulled away from the barn, followed closely by the dark trail jeep. Every part of her wanted to chase after them, but Grant's men were already sweeping the property, their search methodical and tightening by the second. She had to move. Now. Staying as low as she could, Lena began to crawl away from her hiding spot, inching toward a patch of thicker underbrush she'd spotted earlier. The ground was littered with dry leaves and twigs, and every tiny sound seemed impossibly loud. Her knee hit a branch. Snap. "Over there!" Grant's voice cut through the air, closer than she'd realized. "I heard something." Lena froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "Whatever you think you're doing," Grant shouted, his tone shifting from cold command to cruel confidence. "It won't change anything. Your daughter isn't yours anymore. And soon, no one will ever find her again." She could hear him moving toward her now, his footsteps slicing through the forest floor. "Come out," he said with twisted calm. "Maybe we can work something out." Through the tangled brush, Lena caught glimpses of him, his posture focused, a pistol drawn in his right hand. His face, once a fixture of friendship and trust, was now hard and unfamiliar. "You're only making this harder," he continued, signaling to the others to close in. "Let's be reasonable. We've known each other for years." She couldn't stay hidden much longer. They were triangulating her position, cutting off every escape. Carefully, Lena began to crawl toward the denser thicket, moving only when the wind stirred the trees to mask her movement. But despite all her caution, her foot brushed a pile of dry leaves. Another soft crack. Grant's head snapped toward the sound. His lips curled into a smile. "There you are," he muttered, raising the weapon and striding straight toward her position. He waved his men in her direction. Lena's heart pounded. She had seconds, no more, before they found her. But then, a sound broke through the air. Sirens, wailing, urgent, unmistakable. The forest seemed to shift with the sound as it echoed through the trees. Grant stopped in his tracks, his expression changing from triumph to alarm. "Move!" he shouted. "Back to the cars! Now! Before the cops get here!" His team didn't hesitate. They scattered, abandoning the search and rushing back to the vehicles. Grant lingered just a moment longer, scanning the woods with narrowed eyes, then turned and sprinted for his SUV. Moments later, the roar of engines filled the air as the convoy tore down the gravel path, kicking up a storm of dust and pebbles behind them. Lena remained hidden until the last vehicle was out of sight. Then, slowly, she emerged from the underbrush, shaken but standing, just as her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was Detective Beckett. "Where are you?" he asked urgently. "Are you safe?" "I'm still at the farm," Lena said, breathless. Grant and the others just left when they heard the sirens. "They have Mira, Detective. She's alive. They put her in a box truck, blindfolded. They're taking her somewhere." "Stay exactly where you are," Beckett replied. "We've got units in pursuit. We'll find them." Lena ended the call and broke into a sprint. She had to see for herself, had to know they would reach Mira in time. As she reached the road, flashing lights came into view. Police cruisers sped past, sirens piercing the stillness, and in the distance, Grant's silver SUV, boxed in by patrol cars. More cruisers shot past, clearly chasing the truck and jeep further down the highway. Lena ran straight toward the scene where officers were surrounding Grant's vehicle, weapons drawn. One by one, the men inside stepped out with their hands raised. They were ordered to their knees and placed in cuffs, and then Grant was pulled from the driver's seat. His expression twisted into something dark and furious the moment he saw her. "You were like family," Lena shouted, tears in her voice, pain rising to the surface. "What did we ever do to you?" An officer gently stepped between them to hold her back, but Grant looked straight at her as he was led to a cruiser. His voice was low, but sharp enough to cut through everything. "I hated all of you," he spat. "That company was supposed to be mine. Daniel didn't deserve any of it." Before she could reply, the officer pushed him into the back seat and shut the door. Detective Beckett approached, his face grim but steady. "We intercepted the truck and the jeep," he said. "Your daughter is safe, Mrs. Rowe. She's in protective custody now." Lena's knees nearly gave out. "Take me to her," she whispered. "Please, I need to see her." Detective Beckett led Lena to his unmarked vehicle, updating her along the way. "We're searching the farmhouse and barn now," he said. "Initial findings suggest the property was being used as a base of operations, possibly for years." He glanced toward her. "Your daughter is with paramedics. They're checking her condition right now. About 5 miles down the road, they reached the site where the box truck had been intercepted. Police vehicles surrounded it, lights flashing. Several men sat on the ground in handcuffs, guarded closely by officers. And there, on the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a gray blanket and surrounded by paramedics, was Mira. Not the child Lena had lost 6 years ago, but a young woman, taller, older. Her frame was thin, her face pale, and her eyes held a weight far beyond her years. But when their eyes met, everything fell away. "Mom," Mira whispered, her voice cracking. Lena ran to her, and they collided in a fierce embrace, the kind that said, "I found you. I'm never letting go." They cried together, hands grasping tightly, 6 years of silence and anguish crashing over them in seconds. "I missed you so much," Mira sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "I thought I'd never see you again." "I never stopped looking," Lena whispered, holding her close. "I never stopped hoping." When they finally pulled apart, the paramedics gently resumed their work, checking vitals and documenting injuries. Mira, her voice soft and shaking, began to speak. "Dad and I were only supposed to be gone a few hours that day," she said. "The flight started out perfect. It was beautiful. But something went wrong with the balloon. Dad tried to fix it, but it was too late." Tears slid down her cheeks. "We crashed in the woods. Dad protected me during the landing, but he was hurt. Really bad. He hit the trees hard. We were tangled up, but alive." She paused, gripping her mother's hand tightly. "We called for help. Men came. Grant was with them. We thought they were there to save us." Her voice faltered. "But they weren't." Lena felt her chest tighten. "Grant, he killed Dad," Mira said, barely able to get the words out. "He said the company should have been his. That Dad just smiled for the cameras while he did all the work." Mira's shoulders shook as she continued. "Dad was begging him, not for himself, but for me. He kept saying, 'We built this together.' But Grant didn't care. He shot him while I was right there." Lena clutched her daughter close, heart breaking all over again. "What happened after that?" she asked gently. Mira's face crumpled. "They took me to that farm, locked me underground. I didn't see daylight for weeks at a time. At first, Grant kept me there for himself. Then later, he started moving me around. Always drugged, always blurred." She looked down, hands trembling. "He let other men. He took photos. They talk about how much money each image made, about someone called the boss making a profit." Lena's blood went cold. Her mind flashed back to the pop-up messages she'd seen on Grant's laptop that morning, messages she'd brushed off. Her stomach churned. She turned to Detective Beckett, who had been standing silently nearby. "I saw his screen at the house. Messages, photos. They sounded personal." The detective's eyes narrowed. He immediately radioed in a request. "Search Grant Miles's laptop. Look for explicit content, both local and cloud-stored. Prioritize anything linked to photo distribution." A few tense moments later, an officer radioed back. "We've located the laptop," he confirmed. "Explicit files found, distributed through a private access site, labeled Private Collection VIP. We're taking it down." Before Lena could speak, one of the paramedics approached. "She needs to be transported to the hospital," he said. "Full evaluation, full care." Lena didn't hesitate. "I'm going with her," she said, climbing into the ambulance and taking Mira's hand. As the doors closed and sirens began to wail again, she whispered silently to herself, "Never again, never letting go." At Eldon Mary General Hospital, everything moved quickly. Doctors and nurses worked in focused silence, checking Mira's vitals, drawing blood, performing preliminary assessments. Lena was asked to wait outside while specialists conducted a more thorough exam. Alone in the corridor, Lena finally sat down, her body suddenly heavy with the weight of the day. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. She pulled out her phone and called Nona. "Lena, what's happening?" Nona answered instantly, her voice tense. "They found her," Lena said, her voice breaking. "Mira's alive. She's here, in the hospital. They're examining her now." "Oh my God!" Nona gasped. "How? Where?" Lena recounted everything, finding the balloon, the suspicious behavior at Skyreach, following the truck to the farm, the confrontation with Grant, and Mira's rescue. She described Grant's betrayal, his cruelty, the nightmare her daughter had endured. "You were right about the sabotage," she finished. "Grant was behind everything, all of it. He wanted the company. He took everything else to get it." Nona's voice shook with emotion. "And that online site?" "The police are already dismantling it," Lena said. "They're moving fast. Keep me updated, okay?" Nona said quietly. "Please." "I will," Lena replied, ending the call. And then she sat, waiting, hoping the worst was finally behind them. The emotional weight of the day finally caught up with Lena. She leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes for just a moment, only to be gently awakened by a soft touch on her shoulder. A doctor stood in front of her in a white coat, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Rowe," he said kindly, "I'm Dr. Patel. I've been overseeing your daughter's evaluation." Lena sat up immediately, alert. "How is she?" Dr. Patel's expression was calm but serious. "Physically, she's dehydrated and showing signs of malnutrition, both of which we're treating with IV fluids and a nutritional regimen. She's also being treated for an infection, likely caused by long-term trauma. But the psychological impact," he paused gently, "is significant. We've brought in a specialist, someone who works with survivors of prolonged captivity and abuse. She'll need time, therapy, and a strong support system." Lena nodded, tears rising again. "Can I see her now?" "Yes," the doctor said, "but she's resting. We've given her a light sedative." Lena was just about to follow him when Detective Beckett appeared in the hallway. "Mrs. Rao," he said quietly, "may I have a moment with you before you go in? It won't take long." Reluctantly, Lena turned to the doctor. He nodded understandingly, and she followed the detective into a nearby consultation room. He motioned for her to sit, then placed a file on the table. "I didn't want to tell you this until we had confirmation," he began, opening the folder to reveal a set of official documents. "The initial DNA results from the site we excavated, those bone fragments, they've come back." He met her eyes. "They belong to your husband, Daniel." Though she had already heard it from Mira, the official confirmation struck like a blow. She covered her face with both hands, letting the truth wash over her. Daniel was gone, killed by the man he trusted most. "We also uncovered more," Beckett continued after a respectful pause. "From what we now know, the crash wasn't an accident. It was a carefully planned event. Grant had been studying weather patterns and manipulating the flight plan for weeks. He recruited a few trusted employees, promised them promotions and bonuses once Daniel was out of the picture. He pushed several photos toward her: the wreckage, damaged equipment, internal documents from Skyreach. The GPS was deliberately disabled. The crash site was deep in restricted land, outside the official search zone. That's why we never found anything back then. Grant had altered the flight records. We were looking in the wrong place the entire time." Lena shook her head. "All because he wanted the company? Daniel built that company. He brought Grant in because they were friends." Beckett nodded grimly. "That trust is what Grant exploited. We have statements from his staff confirming his resentment. He handled operations, but Daniel was the public face, the one clients connected with. Grant wanted the recognition, and more importantly, the profits." Lena's voice dropped, bitter and raw. "He didn't even have a family. What was all that money for?" The detective's expression darkened. That's something we're still investigating. Based on evidence recovered at both the farm and Skyreach HQ, it appears Grant initially kept Mira isolated, but over the past year, he began distributing content through a private online network targeting high-paying subscribers. The men we apprehended at the farm are part of a broader trafficking operation we've been tracking. Lena's stomach turned. At headquarters, I overheard them. They mentioned moving up a meeting, a client arriving sooner because you were coming the next day. That lines up, Beckett confirmed. Once he realized we'd found the balloon, he panicked, tried to erase the last loose ends, including Mira. They reviewed the charges now stacking up: first-degree murder, abduction, exploitation, obstruction of justice, and more. And they discussed arrangements for Daniel's proper burial once forensic procedures were completed. When the meeting concluded, the detective escorted Lena back toward Mira's room. "We'll need formal statements from you and your daughter," he said quietly. "But that can wait. For now, she just needs her mother." Outside the door, Lena paused. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion, "for not giving up on us. Not after all these years." Beckett gave a small, sad smile. "That's the job, Mrs. Rowe. I just wish we'd found her sooner." Inside, Mira lay in the hospital bed, an IV running gently into her arm. Despite the years that had passed, she looked so young, so vulnerable. Lena stepped closer. Mira's eyes fluttered open at the sound. "Mom?" she whispered, reaching out. Lena took her hand instantly and sat beside her. "I'm here, sweetheart, and I'm not going anywhere." "Is it really over?" Mira asked, voice breaking. "Am I free?" "Yes," Lena said, brushing her hair softly. "Grant and the others, they're in custody. They can never hurt you again." Mira's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again. After a while, I started to believe them, that you'd moved on, that you'd forgotten me." "Never," Lena said fiercely. "I never stopped searching, never stopped believing. Every single day, I thought about you and about your father." They held each other in the stillness of that hospital room, mother and daughter, together again after 6 lost years. There would be healing ahead, pain, testimony, rebuilding. But for now, there was peace. The afternoon sun spilled gently through the window blinds, casting soft gold across the bed. "We'll get through this," Lena whispered, holding her daughter close. "One day at a time." Mira rested her head against her mother's shoulder. "That's all I ever wanted," she murmured. "Just together." And Lena smiled through her tears. "Then together is where we'll begin."